Dennis Rinner back with you for a short fireside chat on the subject of back to basics. I want to discuss several fundamentals of blocking and tackling techniques that will ensure you are prepared when you conduct that important game time extended care interview so you don't miss your assignment. Starting the conversation. It seems as though that this is pretty basic on the surface. But in starting the conversation, there's more. This acts as more of your internal checklist when we start talking about who to have the conversation with, why do you need to have the conversation, when to have the conversation, and how to start the conversation. Today on our Back to Basics, I'm just going to talk about having the conversation, the who, with your existing Medicare clients. Why do you need to have that conversation? Because you're going to explain to your clients about how they have through Medicare immediate care coverage, but they don't have extended care coverage. When to have this conversation? I recommend before you hang up the phone on that call, at the end of every interview, review, that you just simply bring it up. If you can just bring it up, you'll find how much easier it is to actually have the conversation. And how do you have the conversation? How do you start it? Well, let's go through and let me share with you an approach that you may want to try. I call it feel, felt, found. When you incorporate these words into your conversation, it can create what I call a security in numbers feeling with the client you're having that conversation with. It helps them to relate to maybe what other clients of yours have experienced on this topic. Let me give you an example. We'll use Bob and Mary. Bob and Mary, when I bring up the topic of extended care, some call it short-term care, long-term care. Some of my clients feel that they are already covered because they have Medicare. They have immediate care coverage through their Medicare program, including the supplemental coverage of a Medicare supplement or Medicare Advantage, but they don't have extended care coverage. Let me explain the difference. Understanding now that they're not covered for extended care, my clients felt, Bob and Mary, because of this hole or this gap in their existing Medicare healthcare plan, along with the potential huge out-of-pocket care costs that they would have to incur that could range from $50,000 to $100,000 per year, that they needed to explore their options on getting protected. Can you both see how important it is that as to why I wanted to have this conversation with you? Bob and Mary, I'm sure you can relate to this. My other clients also felt what made it real for them was the personal experience of having a family member, a friend, or just knowing someone who went through that experience of needing care and had to pay out of pocket for that care. That really hit home, knowing it could happen to them and that they could really be impacted financially during their retirement years. Do you have an experience with a family member or know someone who went through that care experience? My other clients who I've had this discussion with were pleasantly surprised when they found out how painless the process was to actually apply for coverage. They did not have to take a physical. They did not have to give fluids of any kind. The insurance company, in fact, did not even ask for doctor records. They found the insurance carrier only needed to ask a few health questions on the application. And it may be good to have an app handy. I'm just giving you a little tip here. And any questions about their meds that they would just give them a quick call for clarification. Bob and Mary, my other clients, found the approval process only took a few days. My clients also found that the plan that was personalized for them, that I worked with them on, was easy for them to understand as far as what it covered with respect to home care, which was important to them, and facility care, recognizing that that could happen too, that their care could progress. And they liked the fact that this plan paid 100% cash benefit when it came time for them to know in the future if they had to file a claim for services. Now, what I just shared with you was not meant to be a full interview. It was meant just to give you an idea of how you can incorporate the words feel, felt, found. Now let's turn our attention to 4 reminders that will also help you when starting the conversation. So we talk in number 1 about framing the question. I remember many years ago when I was working through my summers through high school, I actually worked on a construction site. They gave me the assignment to be a general laborer, which means I just basically did anything that the construction supervisor told me to do, because I didn't really have a lot of skills as a high school student. So I was just doing, random odd jobs. But I would always look with admiration as I watched these individuals who strapped on that tool belt and took out that hammer, and they were the framers. Man, they played an important role in building that house. Not to say that the electrician or the drywaller or the roofer, everyone played a role, but it was the framers that had to put that home together. They had to they had to build the structure. And so I think our role is that we too are framers. It's the way that we frame the question at the end of every interview. And so let me share with you, just as an example, about how you might want to consider, framing a question. I might say something like this, and I'll use Bob and Mary again. Bob and Mary, have you ever looked into any care planning strategies, such as long-term care? There's now short-term care, and also it is referred to as extended care. You wait for them to respond. Now, when you listen, you can then drill down. Sometimes agents like to ask a question and then they like to answer it for the client. I have what I call my 70-30 formula, where 70% of the time I want to be a good listener, and 30% of the time I want to be a good framer. I want to frame that question, and then based on listening, I then want to drill deeper so that I can basically get this client more involved in that process. So let's assume, back to Bob and Mary, that they said to you, yeah, I looked into long-term care a few years back, but we found that we couldn't qualify for coverage. And I might then frame the question again. A lot has changed, Bob and Mary, in the last few years with these plans. Do you remember exactly why you were turned down? So once again, I won't go through this extensively, but what I'm sharing with you is framing and listening go hand in glove together. Number 3, balance. This care topic can be an emotional topic. There's no doubt. There's people who've had personal experiences. They've known family members. They've been impacted themselves financially, helping out family members who may have needed care. So they're kind of perhaps already on board. They're raising their hand that they are leaning in. But remember, there is the balance between logic and emotion. I can remember a few years back, it was going to be Super Bowl Sunday, and one of my favorite teams was going to be in the Super Bowl. And the TV that we had was getting a little bit older. It was a little bit smaller. And I had said to my wife, I'm just going to go down to Costco and to see if there's any deals. Now, I was certainly emotionally invested in wanting to have a new 70-inch TV to replace the 50-inch TV because I didn't feel that would be big enough. And so, although my emotional attachment of the moment was to have a desire to have this TV, it wasn't strictly an emotional decision. I then used logic because I was able to persuade my wife that, look, Jill, the logic of this makes sense. It's on sale. I can get this TV at a substantial discount. So I share that with you because there is the difference between emotional, where the client doesn't want to be a burden to their family. They want to maintain independence. They want to perhaps age in place. They want to stay out of that nursing home. But yet the logic is it has to make sense. It has to fit their budget. And so remember how important it is when you're having that conversation. Thomas Jefferson said, as one of our founders, this statement. He said, "The ultimate power lies in the people themselves. If you think them not enlightened to cast an informed discretion, the remedy is never to take away someone's discretion, but to simply inform it." We know that we need to inform and educate, and as we do, as we incorporate frame, listen, and balance, we then can lead people to that successful conclusion. Really, that logical conclusion that an extended care plan makes sense. So as we've talked today about back to basics, let me finish with this final thought. It's back to my story of working construction a little bit. And it's a poem about builders, and it goes like this. I saw them tearing a building down, a gang of men in a busy town. With a low heave-ho and a lusty yell, they swung a beam and the sidewall fell. And I asked the foreman if these men were as skilled as those he would hire if he were to build. He laughed and said, "Oh, no, indeed. General laborers are all I need, for they can wreck in a day or two, but builders have taken years to do." So I asked myself as I went my way, which of these roles am I to play? Am I the builder who works with care, measuring life by the rule and square? Or am I the wrecker who walks the town, content in the role of tearing down? We're not general laborers. We're builders. We're framers. We're individuals who have a mission to serve and help more individuals who need this type of a product that we are discussing with them today. I hope that you'll take the time again, and thanks for taking the time today. And I look forward to our next Fireside Chat. Bye for now.